at 5:15. We'll call this meeting to order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well, greetings, everyone. Welcome to our city council meeting. We will start out with roll call. Stacy?
Councilmember Krause?
Yes.
Salvi?
Yes.
Miller?
Yes.
Tillotson? Mayor Walters?
Yes. Thank you. We'll start the meeting, I guess as usual, with my quote for the day, and this one is in the spirit of 9/11/2001. They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them. 22 years ago yesterday, our nation was brutally attacked on September 11, 2001. Those responsible set out to test the resolve of the American people. Let it be known that the citizens of Morris will never forget. Now let us recognize those brave men and women who gave it all in the name of freedom with a moment of silence. Thank you. Okay, we will start out with the agenda approval, and I'll just be looking for a motion to approve, or if there's anything anybody would like to add, now would be a good time.
I'll make the motion to approve the agenda as stands.
I'll second.
Motion and a second to approve the agenda. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Now we will start out with the citizens' comments, and tonight we have a couple of invited guests. At this time, I'll invite Elizabeth up. She's going to give us a presentation from the Coalition of Greater Minnesota Cities and tell us all the good things that's in store for us in 2024.
Yeah.
Do you need help with that?
Pardon?
Sure.
Is it okay
Yeah.
if I sit? I'm just getting over foot surgery. I injured my Liz Frank joint, so my professional football career, like Aaron Rodgers. So, were you able to project the presentation I sent or not? If not, I can
bring
speak from
anything,
handouts. I've
so,
had to do it
yeah.
before. So,
And we have them on our tablets.
Yes.
okay, I just
Shall we?
don't have it.
We have it on our...
Okay, you have it. Is there any way to project it there, otherwise, or no? Okay. I'll just speak from my handouts, and that has. You'll see how close I come. But, okay, I'm just gonna point it down this way. But, thank you, Mayor and members of the council. It's, great to see you all. Great to meet Rebecca. My name is Elizabeth Wafel, and I'm an attorney lobbyist with the Coalition of Greater Minnesota Cities. I think most of you are familiar with us, but for those in the audience, we're an organization of more than 100 cities located across the state working on issues important to Greater Minnesota, ranging from property taxes and LGA, which is probably our biggest issue. We do environment and energy, that's what I work on. Transportation, economic development, housing, childcare issues, as well as working on labor issues, although that's more counseling than lobbying. We come out and visit our cities every year. It's always great to see Morris. I've been a very long time member, been very active. As you may know, we actually gave retiring city manager Blaine Hill an award a month and a half ago because he was extremely involved in our organization, really always very helpful to me on a lot of environment issues and land use issues. This was a session, I tell you. It really was a session. I've been doing this for 15 years, and I think I was busier than I have been the entire time I've been there. A number of factors contributed to that. Obviously, Facing a trifecta where we had the one party in control of the governor's office, in both bodies of the legislature made a difference. It was also a very large budget surplus, and that also had an impact on how things went. It was a budget year, and when the February budget forecast came out, we found out that there were, $17 billion projected surplus. Now, one thing I do want to point out about that projected surplus is that that number sounds really large, and quite frankly, $17 billion is large. However, only $5 billion of that was in what is considered ongoing money. So a lot of sort of the tussle at the Capitol, at least from a budget standpoint, was over the fact that a lot of money was one time, it wasn't ongoing. Heading into the session, we had some big goals. We've been working on the LGA formula, wanted to improve the formula for all of our cities and increase the amount. We wanted a bonding bill. We wanted to put money into priorities like childcare and housing and roads for smaller cities as well as larger cities. Those were some of the top goals. If you look at the packet I brought, you can actually see, and I'll be honest, our presentation, when we first put it together and we do a rough draft of everything we're going to talk about, it took 45 minutes. Nobody wants to listen to me for 45 minutes. So we're actually going to focus on just a few things. But you can kind of see a lot of our different goals. From local government aid to the environment, child care, workforce, housing, and development, and transportation. We also ended up, if you follow along in our weekly CGMC in brief, we ended up working on a number of other issues that popped up throughout the session as well. Sometimes we get pulled into, sometimes I'm working on land use issues to assist the league. The one issue that I was very happy, I'll be honest, I didn't have to work on this year, no annexation lobbying, so that was good, because a lot of times we've been having fights on that. But let's talk about LGA first. This was something, I know LGA is important to Morris, it's important to all of our cities. And the thing about LGA is, there's a fixed appropriation in statute, but it's not adjusted for inflation. It's that same number. And if you've been on here a while, you recall we finally got it back up to that 2002 number. You as city council people know you are impacted by inflation. So we actually want to tie it to inflation. We also need to redo that formula, every 10 years to make sure that it really still works for our cities. And that's one of the things that the CGMC is very heavily engaged in. We have an analyst on staff and are really the voice at these discussions, making sure that when we look at the formula, it continues to make sense for all of our cities. We do a lot of stress testing, looking at different things. And so we had worked, and come up with a new formula. Nothing happened in 2022, so we brought it back in 2023 along with the request for $150 million increase in LGA, which again is a large amount, but it hasn't been tied to inflation, and we think it's really important to not only tie it to inflation, but boost it up. Now, going in there, the first budget that comes out is the governor's budget, and he proposed $30 million for LGA, and he was quite taken aback that we were not that thrilled with the proposal. Again, $30 million isn't nothing, but when you haven't been seeing inflationary increases, it kind of missed the mark. He heard from us loud and clear, and at least he increased his suggested amount to $40 million. Still not where we were at, but it was good to be listened to. The House was probably the one that took us most seriously, and we've got honestly strong bipartisan support in the House, both Democrats and Republicans, for a good LGA formula and a good proposal. And if you look at in the presentation, it shows you the overall kind of results, but this shows you what it looks like for Morris. And as what happens at the legislature, we come in with our proposal. The governor came out with his proposal. Senate came out with their proposal, which matched the governor's proposal at $40 million. House proposed $100 million, as well as indexing it to inflation. And the biggest challenge we ran into is that, as we saw in many other areas, we were not the only people asking for funds. And as I mentioned, LGA is an ongoing thing, so we needed to get a slice of that ongoing pie. And we were competing against childcare, competing against a lot of other priorities for different types of tax relief. So at the end of the day, the bottom line for LGA was an overall $80 million increase. Again, very pleased with that. Still need to go back and get our inflationary increase. But this chart right here shows you, the benefit to Morris. Obviously, best would have been the CGMC proposal because that would have pushed you close to $3 million. But this, at least, the final outcome, you're getting, about $250,000 more than you would have had we not made those changes, and we will be back again. We are going to continue fighting for that inflationary increase as well as keeping that tied to trying to tie it to inflation. Just one other thing I'll mention in tax, one of the things that benefited a number of cities is the public safety aid. That was not something we were necessarily seeking, but it is money that is going out to our cities. The next area I want to mention, and this is where I spent all of my time, but that's not the only reason it makes it into the presentation, but we worked a lot on addressing the lead line issue. As you probably know, there's no good, safe amount of lead in water for kids. And so we partnered with an environmental group, 2 trade unions, and the Association of General Contractors to push forward on a program that would help cities both identify their lead lines and replace it at both the homeowner and the city level. Because, honestly, as I've talked to cities, one thing I found is that a lot of cities have gone through and at least partially replaced their city side, but they haven't replaced the homeowner side. And one other thing, I think cities now know this, is that the EPA is requiring all cities to be inventorying your lead lines in your city on both sides. And that initial run through has to be done by October 2024. So we were able to, again, working with this coalition, come up with $240 million for this program that's going to be paid out over, I think it's 2 years. It's a good start. We asked for $800 million, we got $240 million. So we will be back at that. But what it will do is help pay for the inventory and help cities pay for both replacement of your side of the pipes as well as the homeowners. So we think that's really important. Another thing we spent a lot of time working on was bonding. And as you may know, we haven't had a bonding bill in a couple years. We had one in 2020, it took forever. 2021, no supplemental bonding bill. 2022, they just never got around to it. So there was a big appetite going into this session for bonding. But this is one area where both parties have to agree. So if you're the minority party, it's a good way to exercise your voice. And at the big, sort of March, sort of towards the beginning of session, the House came out with a bonding bill, hit a lot of priorities in both bodies. But then, it got passed over there, goes over to the Senate, and the Senate GOP said, hey, wait a minute, there's some stuff we want. This is the only leverage we have, so we're not voting for your bonding bill. We'd like to see this. We'd like to see some tax relief happen. We'd like to see you put some money towards nursing homes. This sort of back and forth continued throughout the session, sometimes in front of people, sometimes not in front of people. But as it was getting closer to the end of session, the DFL finally said to them, look, we don't need your votes to pass. We could pay for this all with cash. This concerned us because if they did that, we would have seen a lot of Greater Minnesota priorities ignored in that cash bill. There would have been a little bit of money for water, a little bit of money for some of our priorities, but it would not have covered all of our needs. And so, again, worked with others, but the CJMC came out with a letter that, I'll be honest, had a bigger reaction than I've ever seen anything we've done since I've been at the Capitol. Just kind of saying to folks hey, you really need to take this seriously. A cash bill is bad for us. Step up, and help your cities. And there was a couple trades unions that did something similar. A lot of our local officials called their legislators and said, let's get this done. They did, kind of closing hours of session, finally got a bonding bill done and got money towards nursing homes, which quite frankly is a big need in Greater Minnesota. So we got money for nursing home, we got a bonding bill, had record amounts of money for water, which is, again, something I spent a lot of time working on, as well as money for roads and bridges, a lot of the basic needs, plus a lot of projects for our city. So it was a good result overall. One challenge I want to mention, and then it kind of runs into some of the other challenges that we're facing, is, again, it goes back to the environment. And, with the change in the trifecta, we haven't had a trifecta in 10 years, but it looks a little bit different than it did, say, back in 2013. And that's because the sort of where the locus of power has shifted, largely due to population changes. So there's just not as many Democrats who are from rural areas. And so a lot of the power of the current majority is concentrated in the metro area. So on a lot of things, like environment bonding, it became very important for us to make sure folks understood how things affected Greater Minnesota. We saw it with water infrastructure funding. There was a push to try and change what's called the Water Infrastructure Fund, which is how a lot of our cities, pay for sewer and drinking water. And there was an effort to change the formula that would have basically pushed a lot of the money to the metro area. And we had to spend a lot of time, had to go above people's heads to be like, you need to not change this formula. It works. The PFA is very respected. we need you to not do this. They in fact, snuck provisions that would have made this happen into the House Jobs Bill, and we had to get, the governor's office calling people the night before this bill moved through committee to try and get it out. I know that there were goals that folks were trying to be there, and I don't think it's a dislike of Greater Minnesota, but what it is not understanding, how things impact Greater Minnesota, and that's why we spend a lot of time working with legislators saying, this is important, this is, for the entire state. We saw it on a number of environmental initiatives. I spent a lot of time working on policy issues that moved forward, that again, we're trying to address some environmental problems that we saw in pockets of, say, North Minneapolis, but they were approaching these policy problems with solutions that covered the entire state. We had to spend a lot of time explaining to legislators, you can't do this because things are, population, where we are, how things are done in Greater Minnesota is different. And we spent a lot of time working on it, but we were able to push back on some of these initiatives. So, there were a number of different bills that, working with, our legislators, both Democrat and Republican, who are still in the rural areas, were able to narrow things down so that they only impacted the metro area. So that was another thing we spent a lot of time on. A lot of other good things happened. Like I said, if I went through everything, it would take 40 minutes. I don't want to do that to you. So a lot of details in here, also in the PowerPoint presentation that I sent. But overall, I think, again, there were challenges this session. There was a lot of time spent talking about how things impact Greater Minnesota and making sure they understood our message. But overall, I think there was a lot of good that happened for Greater Minnesota. We're starting to look towards 2024. We'll be pushing for another bonding bill, seeing if there's going to be a supplemental budget, working on some policy issues that affect Greater Minnesota in a variety of areas. But that work starts now, and I'll be honest, can't do this without you folks. I mean, this really is, what has made the CGMC successful throughout the years. We've got our lobbyist presence in St. Paul, but then we have all of you, who are out helping us talk to your legislators, reaching out to them, and that's really kind of that cooperative effort, helps us get things done. Just a couple other mentions again. If you have any questions, you can always call me afterwards or email me or whatnot, because it's a lot of information. Our fall conference is coming up, and it will be over in Wilmer this year. And that is a great way. If you haven't been to a conference before, it's always a good one. We do a kind of a preview and talk about what we'll be doing this legislative session. I think it's the 14th through the 16th. It's on the save the date sheet. So 2 nights there. It's also a really good way to get to know, it's the 16th and 17th. It's only 2 days. Our summer one is 3 days. Get to know some of your fellow members of other cities. And our conference, honestly, it's small. I've been to the League Conference, Gate Conference. This is a lot smaller, so a lot more time to talk with folks from other cities. And then our Legislative Action Day is in March. That's always the biggest event of the year. Get a lot of people there. We, talk to our legislators. We go to Mancini's. It's a great time. And then next year's summer conference is going to be in St. Joseph's. So hope you can make one of those events. The other thing I will mention is that we are starting to recruit for our policy committees. We would love to have any and all of you on one of our policy committees. It helps us decide what policies and what priorities we're going to be working on during the legislative session, and then at least with some of the committees, including the ones I staff, which are environment and energy, as well as land use and annexation. We look, and it's not a huge time commitment, but we do ask your opinion throughout the year, like, hey, this bill came up, do we need to be concerned about it, that kind of thing. So it's a really great way to get engaged, from your desk in Morris to help us in St. Paul. So a lot of information. Hopefully I did it okay without the PowerPoint presentation. But does anyone have any questions?
If you could speak a little bit to that lead pipe initiative, the first round of money that was let, Becca and I actually looked into it a bit, but we didn't qualify out here in Greater Minnesota. So what are you seeing that as this thing progresses? Is there gonna be some help for beyond this first initial money that was kind of let?
Yes, and so you should be, and do you mean for the grant the grant portion for the inventory?
Yep.
Okay, I would actually, there's going to be another round of applications in December, they told me they don't know exactly when it'll go out, December or January. I would look into it again into reapplying, because they are really trying to get that money to everybody who applies for it. The goal with the lead money is to try and get it for everyone. And I know that, honestly, I'll be honest, the publicity around it, and sort of some of it may have been a bit confusing. I kind of pointed that out to them, quite frankly. But there will be another round. You should be able to go after that. And then with the money for the actual replacement, it will run through the regular PFA program. So it's just that same program, or it's that similar application process that you make when you're, seeking a loan or a grant for your sewers or your drinking water. You need to get the MDH, the Minnesota Department of Health, will be running the list. And they've got a list of criteria, but one of the things that we made sure was that it applied, across the board, so that both greater Minnesota, that it wasn't just going to the metro area. And that was something we spent a lot of time ensuring. But you need to get sort of on the project priority list. And then it's they'll be looking at a number of criteria. Probably, some of the things they'll be looking at is, are you doing it in conjunction with other work? They'd like to ideally try to combine it so you're doing it at the same time as some of your road and sewer. Are you prioritizing areas that are, lower income or have a lot of children living near there? But the goal with the program is they want to help all of the cities get this done. So I would encourage you to take like I said, the inventory itself. My understanding is they'll be reopening it for grants again this year, and there's 4 different, I can't remember the exact 4 categories. There's kind of like designing your program, some of the on-the-ground work, I can't remember what the other 2. So hopefully if it didn't look quite right, you should be eligible the next time around. If you're having some problems, running into some walls over there, give me a call, and I can maybe try and help you shift to the right direction, but you should be able to. And they do, it was extremely important to us. And again, that was one of the areas we talked a lot about, making sure that this money was getting out to greater Minnesota.
I think it would probably behoove us then to, between now and December, take a look at our lead pipe issues that we have out there. And so when that time comes, we're ready.
Yeah.
Okay.
Any other questions?
So you mentioned updating the LGA formula every 10 years?
Yeah.
Yeah. Are you guys concerned at all that we potentially have something that affects that earlier than those 10 years, right? Is that normal, right? Like what do you guys consider it to be?
Yeah, honestly, one of the biggest reasons we do it every 10 years is because of the census. Sure. And so I'm trying to remember what dropped off the formula. There were some changes that were made. The cities where we have the biggest worries, or have seen we've got cities whose LGA has, even with the current formula, has crept up over the years, even without a lot of money coming in there. But what we have seen is cities like Detroit Lakes, Red Wing, and so forth, that have seen significant sort of expansion in certain types of property wealth, that they've been almost getting kicked off the formula. Or Waite Park is, finally got in the formula, but was going on and off. And so it's kind of watching, and if we see that there's something, we kind of look at, is how much of it is impacting some of our member cities in between. It does, like I said, we came up with this formula, the new work on the formula back in 2021. Sometimes it takes a while to also just get it through. Yeah. So we do continue to watch it, because like with all our members, we are, running off these reports for every single one of them and kind of watching how is it impacting it. Usually I would say that for the cities that are impacted, it's kind of around the fringes. Occasionally there will be, I haven't seen this happen with Morris, but cities who have something really, I'm trying to think of the last time this has happened, but have had a massive disaster or something like a huge, piece of property that gets off the tax rolls that affect, and then we sometimes will help coach them in terms of you need to go ask for something individual, but that doesn't happen that often. So it's really honestly watching just sort of generally where our cities are going in terms of this. But generally, every 10 years has worked. Sometimes we've tried to look at a little bit sooner if something's really kind of getting wacky. But we do, that's why we keep an analyst on staff whose primary job is to work. They work with other formulas, but their biggest job is working with that LGA formula. Yep. So, and we have a consultant, Jeff Van Wyken, that we hire every year. He's not a full-time employee, but he's been working with us for 20 years or so and probably knows as much or more about the LGA formula than anybody in the state. So, it was a good question. Any other questions? You should get on the LGA and Property Tax Committee.
She's recruiting already.
Yep.
Exactly.
Yep. I'm pleased to see that there's allocations for childcare, and you know that's a big one, right? Workforce
Yeah.
and housing. Those are all very positive.
Yeah.
So.
And those are some, honestly, when I started 15 years ago, that wasn't on our list. If you remember when I came out here, that is something, again, this is why we want to hear from our members, that we started hearing everywhere, like, you got to do something about childcare, you got to do something about housing. And I didn't get into it in depth, but we helped create two or three different programs around those, like finally got funding on some infrastructure for childcare and some infrastructure for housing that's been now financed and stuff like that. So it's why we so need to hear from our members so we know what's happening here on the ground to help make sure our programs reflect what you need. So, well, thank you. And again, I apologize that hopefully winging it went okay. So,
You did fine.
Thank you.
Thank
Very
you
good.
very much.
Thank
Thank you very much.
and again, call, email if you have questions.
Yep, thanks for coming. All right, we have next up, Felix is going to present to us from Morris Sustainability.
Can I put my computer?
You can,
While he's setting up, if I could just say a couple words about
Jane Griffin,
his
yes.
internship.
by all means.
So Felix was here this summer, starting in April, and now he's wrapping up his time here next week, or at the end of this week actually. And he has been doing he's a environmental engineering student. Energy engineering student at the University of Applied Sciences in Munster. And he came as a part of 3 German interns this summer, 2 of whom were working at the West Central Research and Outreach Center on PFAS and green ammonia. And then Felix was working on analyzing the performance of the first year of our solar production on our city buildings. And his work was supported through the City of Morris and through the Southwest Regional Sustainable Development Partnership. And this report will be available to all of you once we get the final touches on the actual physical report this week. And then we'll also be sending it to other cities in greater Minnesota who have questions about how solar performs on city buildings and what the cash flows look like and stuff. So Felix will focus on the performance, and then if there's time, I have some information about the financial analysis. But if there's not time, I can just send that to you individually. And with that, maybe I'll move this over there and let him start.
Can we have a link to that on our website, to his presentation?
To his presentation? Yep, I can send it, or Stacey and you can talk tomorrow and get it.
I think that'd be good.
Okay, awesome. Is it cool if I move this over there?
Should be, if the cord will reach, yeah, by all means.
Okay, hello, good afternoon to you all. Today I would like to show you a little bit of the performance of the solar photovoltaic here in the city of Morris. But firstly, I would like to provide you some background information about myself. My name is Felix Lücken. I'm an intern, as Griffin said, at the Office of Sustainability here in Morris. But in Germany, I'm a student. I'm studying at the University of Applied Science in Münster, and my studying area is energy technology or energy engineering. Before my studies, I completed an apprenticeship as a refrigeration engineer, and then I decided to go studying. About this internship, what I did here so far, it started in the middle of April, and unfortunately it will end really soon in the middle of September. So my work that I did here so far was creating a report about the performance and the system analytics of the existing PV systems or photovoltaic systems here in Morris. So the report has the name Performance of the Solar Photovoltaic in the City of Morris, and the goal from it is to analyze and demonstrate the installation of the performance of the PV system on public and private buildings here in Morris. So for this presentation, I will describe a brief description of the PV system. okay for you? Okay. I will show you a brief description of a photovoltaic system, explaining some units. Then I will start with some difference from the solar irradiation between Minnesota and Germany. Then introduction of the public buildings and detailed insight into 2 buildings. And at the end I will talk a little bit about the electrical consumption and production of all public buildings. So starting with the brief description of a photovoltaic system, it's made out of it's made of a solar panel. These are one or more connected panels are together, and the panels are generating DC voltage out of the sunlight. So then we came to a blocking diode. The function of the blocking diode is preventing backwards flow, so it works like a checking wall. And the inverter inverts the current from DC current to AC current, because most of the consumers, almost all consumers in a household, all applications run with AC current or AC voltage. So then I will talk in this report a lot of kilowatt hours, but what is a kilowatt hour? So a kilowatt hour is the amount of energy generated or consumed when power of 1 kilowatt is sustained for 1 hour. So in easy words, what can you do with 1 kilowatt hour? For example, you can washing 1 cycle of laundry with a washing machine, or lighting a room with an energy saving lamp for 50 hours, watching television for 7 hours, or in just easy words, cook a meal for 4 persons. So to get you also some insights how it is in Germany, so the different solar irradiance between Minnesota and Germany, we can, over the months, the unit here is kilowatt hours per square meter. So this means how much of the energy from the sun is hitting the surface from the earth. We can see here Minnesota in the orange color receives more than Germany. Germany is here in the blue color, solar irradiation over the months. So the reason for this is the geographic location. The most part of Minnesota are further south than the most parts of Germany. So this is the reason why Minnesota receives more solar irradiation. To be exact, Minnesota receives 41% more solar irradiation than Germany. But Minnesota has to handle with some weather problems, especially in the winter. The problem there is that the solar panels are covered with snow, and the losses are really high. A study from the year 2013 show, and the study is from Colorado, shows that the losses in the winter months are up to 90%. But when I was working here with the data, I was seeing that the losses are way more higher than 90%. So in the winter months, the system don't produce here anything when there's lots of snow on it. So moving on, or after clearing the fundamental stuff, moving on to the 4 public buildings I created or I handled in my report. The public library, the city hall, the liquor store, and the community center. These 4 buildings are all really interesting because every one of them has a different usage profile. For example, the library don't use any natural gas for heating. So this is the house or the building has installed a heat pump and or a geothermal heat pump, and the geothermal heat pump uses a lot of electrical energy, but this whole building don't use any natural gas for heating. Another public building is the city hall. This is a really good example for an average office building. Special about this building is that this has an electrical car charger, and also the liquor store is really interesting because in the liquor store are lots of coolers or refrigeration systems installed to keeping the products there cool. But refrigeration system, or I would call them coolers, are using a lot of electrical energy, but they're also producing a lot of waste heat, and the waste heat is used inside the building. So you can see it later that this building uses lots of electrical energy but less natural gas because the waste heat from the coolers inside the building are used for heating up the building itself. Coming to the last public building with solar PV is the community center, where we are here inside right now. This is so interesting because this building is not all the time on full load. So in some months, this whole building works together with the PV system with a self-sufficiency over 100%. So for this presentation, I will take a closer look to the City Hall and the public library. On the City Hall, on the roof of the City Hall are 92 panels installed, and these panels generate us a DC peak power from around 33.6 kilowatt, and 3 installed inverters converted it to AC peak power, and after the converting we have around 23.1 kilowatt hour. So in the year 2022, the system operates with 960 full load hours. So that means how much of the time this year the system operating under the nameplate power. So the next performance measure is here the performance ratio. The performance ratio is a way to compare solar panels or solar systems under perfect, so where they are working real, to compare how they're working under perfect conditionings. Perfect conditionings are, for this example, laboratory conditioning, so where we have perfect sunlight and the panels are not really dirty. So the last two numbers I mentioned, the full load hours and the performance ratio, could be a little bit higher, but these are annual numbers that are getting over the whole year, and as I told already, in the winter months they don't produce any electrical energy, so this is the reason why the numbers are so low. But all in all, the building produced in the year 2022 32,232 electrical kilowatt hours of electrical energy, but in this building only 8,389 could be used directly in the building. The reason for this is it's not always a usage there when the system is operating, and so the building is feeding some energy into the grid, and so the energy is not blown away, it's just feed in the grid and used in some other places where it's found some usage at this exact point. So on this graph we can see the electrical consumption of the whole City Hall. So the peaks are in the summer months due to the refrigeration system what is installed, and as I mentioned above, refrigeration systems or AC systems that are cooling down the air, using a lot of electrical energy. So this is the reason why there are so high peaks in the summer months. But here we can see the green marked color is the energy that is sustainable produced by the PV system. So the energy that is produced on the building and is used directly inside the building. Going on to this diagram, here I added on top the natural gas consumption of the building. This is possible because you can easily convert the unit terms. I think American people normally use the unit terms when they're working with natural gas, can be converted to kilowatt hours. So we also do this normally in Germany when we are working with natural gas, that we are working with this in kilowatt hours. One term is 29.3 kilowatt hours, but this diagram gives us some more insights about the total energy consumption from the whole building, and this diagram becomes more interesting when we are thinking about making maybe the heating system more sustainable. Heat pumps are here the key word. So going on to the library has installed some more solar panels, 133 on the roof, and they provide a DC power from 48.55 kilowatts, and 6 inverters converts this to 36 kilowatt hours. So in the here I have the full load hours from June 2020 to June 22 to June 23, because the system only was start operating in June 22, so I had not a full year of data for this, and so I have some more comparable data. So it's not from January to December, so it's starting in the middle of the year. So these numbers are also really good, but yes, as I mentioned above, they could be a little bit higher, but this is due to snow cover, which you can't do so much on the. But the total energy electrical production was 39. Wait a minute. 39,107 kilowatt hours and 29,907 kilowatt hours could be used directly in the building. So here we have the same diagram as for the city hall. We have here the total electrical consumptions. We can see here good the peaks. Here are the peaks in the winter months. This is because the heating system works with so much electrical energy. And also here in the green color is the PV generated electricity that is used directly in the building. And when we have a look at the total energy consumption, this is exactly the same diagram without the green color, because we don't use any natural gas inside this building. So when we compare these two diagrams in a percentage breakdown, the library works with 100% of electrical energy, and the city hall works with 23% of electrical energy, and 77% are natural gas in the whole energy breakdown. When we take a closer look to the electrical consumption, we can see that 22% of the used electricity in the library is produced sustainable by the PV system. So this is the number for the year 2022. So yeah, but this building uses a lot of use only electricity and no natural gas. So this building has a large amount of electricity consumption. By the city hall, it's a little bit different. Here we have 51% of the electricity is produced sustainable by the PV system, and the 49% are bought from other sources. Here it's notable that some of the produced energy is fed into the grid. So this is not the energy that is used directly in the building, but so these are only theoretical numbers. Let's have a quick look to the other buildings with installed solar PV on their roof. Here, a really interesting example is the liquor store. We use here only 16% natural gas and 84% of electricity from the whole energy consumption. I already told you the waste heat from the coolers could be used really good inside this building to heating it up. The city hall is really good divided that from the energy consumption, so it's really close to 50%. When we take here a closer look to the electrical energy consumption, we can see that 26% of the energy from the electrical energy from the liquor store is produced sustainable by the PV system, and by the community center it's 32%. So to sum up all the consumption and production from the public buildings, here with the airports, the public workshops, the fire hall, and the 4 public buildings I mentioned before, they consume altogether 472,928 kilowatt hours and produce 99,405 kilowatt hours. So when in the case when we compare the production with the consumption, we came along that the total electricity self-sufficiency of all public buildings is around 21%. So 21% of the used energy from the public buildings is produced sustainable by the PV system. So these 2 pie charts show us a little bit in another view how the energy consumption and the energy production is divided by the different buildings. So let's come to the end for my presentation. For this I would like to say a few words for to thank some people. So lots of thanks to Troy Goodnow and give him back for providing me so much advice and the high quality data. Also to the CSM program, where Mo is also part from, and especially there to Dr. Sabine Engel and Professor Christoph Wetter. This is my professor from Germany who make this internship possible, and also for the RSDP for all the supports they're giving me so far. So this was my presentation so far. Thank you for listening. I hope you, when you have some questions, feel free to ask me. Or if you came up later with some questions, you can just call me or send me an email. So, but I will write on some vacation after my internship, and I hope will look if I can answer this. But thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Well, Felix, thanks very much for all your hard work. It's obvious you've been busy since you've been here, and we really appreciate all the help that you've given. I know Griffin probably appreciates it. So, yeah. How long are you here for before you have to go back?
I will go back on Saturday, so this upcoming Saturday.
Wow.
So
Short time.
really close.
Well, happy trails to you wherever it takes you. You're going back home then, I assume?
I will go traveling with one of the other interns from Germany who's working at the Westbrook Center. So we are going to the East Coast, then we are driving back, and then back to the airport to Minneapolis in the middle of October, and then we will land also in the middle of October back in Germany.
And then you're taking a train back to Germany from US?
No, we are flying. So
I just had one question on your
Of course.
presentation. If I understand you correctly, on the library and on City Hall, we're producing more electricity than we're using, a little bit more, I think, and at the City Hall. Is that a fair assumption to make? Or did I miss
no, I
something?
think especially in the library and the City Hall, the PV generated energy is not completely covered by the PV system, but a big part from it. So by the library, it's 22% are produced sustainable, and by the City Hall, it's 51%.
Okay,
So
okay. That helps clear it up.
yeah.
Can you go forward about 2 or 3 slides?
For what?
From this one, can you go other way?
Okay.
Right there. So you have a production and consumption for City Hall, for example, right? We produce more than what we consume, just based on this.
Oh, yeah, this is true. I think there is a mistake. I did a mistake. This is true. I think I matched something up.
Because I was going to have a follow up to Kevin's question.
Yeah.
Is if we're producing more than what we're consuming, is there, obviously you mentioned that we sell some of it to the back, put it back into the grid, sell it for potential profit, right? But is there a way that we could potentially use some of that in other, whether it be the liquor store or whatever, to make up some of that difference there?
So you mean to put
Store
it to store it?
Yeah. Yep.
Yes, there are options to store it, but yes, when you're coming up with battery storage, so it's getting really expensive when you're getting so much, and especially in the summer months when the production is also at the highest point, you have also lots of consuming, and when you're running maybe an HVAC system out of the battery storage, it will charge up the batteries really quick, and there are some possibilities to install this. I think one of the best buildings will be for this, maybe this community center, because it's not all the time on the photo. So, but I not did so much research about battery storage potential. So because you always have lots of usage directly at the production time. So in Germany it's a little bit different. We don't use so much HVAC system or cooling systems inside the building. So we store lots of energy that is produced over the day, and when the people coming back from work, for example, they're using it then there.
Or putting a electrical heating system in City Hall.
Correct.
Or finding out what we get when we sell the power back to the power company. Do we get the same rate when we sell it to the city? I don't think we do our outer tail as what we're paying for it, so it probably would make sense for us to look at doing an electrical heating system for
our city hall, and then seeing that our airport is our next biggest
Yeah.
consumption of electricity, so going forward, that's probably a good spot for us to look at.
And that's kind of what I was gonna,
To-
trying to get at,
To
yeah.
go to there,
Yeah.
for us to, if we expand with more solar, to do it where we have our biggest consumption. Griffith, you got some?
Put it on there because we didn't know how we were trying to think of how we wanted to define a public building, whether or not it was like a place like this that people could actually come to, or like a place like the water treatment plant. So our water treatment plant is actually our largest consumer. And if we included that in this calculation, it would actually bring down the total self-sufficiency to lower. The reason we did it this way is because the water treatment plant, it's like part of like water infrastructure, which I think for this analysis, we wanted to separate out from buildings where like people are like, I don't know, I can explain more. I have a financial analysis here as well, if you want to hear that, if there's time.
I would like to see a copy of that. If we just get that also forwarded to us, would be awesome
Yeah.
to see. And then if we have community questions on it. But yeah, very, very good information and awesome. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you for giving me this opportunity also to the city. So I really appreciate it. I had a really great time here, I have to say. So I really enjoyed to living here for 5 months in this
So
city.
what did you enjoy most about Morse?
This is a good question. So also Troy Goodnow asked me this a few days ago, but I would say there's nothing special I enjoyed really the most. So it was like, yeah, every day a small highlight. So and everything together make it really great. And what I also really enjoying here, the people in America are way more open than in Germany. So everyone wants to help and talk to you. And when you imagine doing an internship as in US in Germany, I think that would be a little bit more difficult. So because the people thinking, okay, here's your stuff, do it. But here really the people are really helpful. I think this is also especially here in Minnesota. I went also for a trip to New York with some friends, and I noticed that Minnesota, the people are really nice here. So
Well, don't be a stranger. Be sure and come back and see us.
yes, of course.
Take care of yourself. Thank you.
Thank
Thank you again.
I will look up with the energy consumption and production, and then I will share the new information.
Great.
Okay. All right, we shall move on. We do not have any public hearings tonight. We will move on with the reading and approval of the regular meeting minutes from 8/22/23.
I'll move approval of the regular minutes from 8/22.
I'll second that. We have a motion and a second to approve the regular meeting minutes. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Carried.
Just
have
in
the-
other business, it's noted that I asked about the status of the pickleball courts, and then I answered that supposedly they'll be done by Labor Day, but I believe it was one of our two to my left that had questioned on the status of the pickleball court. I do think it was Brian, and that's in both the regular minutes and the condensed. It's not a major, but just hate to take all the credit there.
Okay.
Yeah, they're done.
All right, then with those corrections, we have the condensed version of the minutes.
I will move approval of the condensed minutes from August 22 meeting.
I will second.
Motion and a second on the condensed version of the minutes. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Carried. Then we have the 8/29/23 work session meeting minutes.
I'll move approval of the 8/29 work session minutes.
I will second.
Motion and a second to approve the 8/29/23 work session meeting minutes. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, same sign. Motion carried. And we'll move on to the consent agenda, which consists of the audit of city bills, gambling reports, transit report, pay estimate number 1, 2022 airport weather site preparation, and then item E, the exempt permit for Someplace Safe.
I will move approval of the consent agenda.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Are there any discussions on anything else on the consent agenda?
Yes, line item 70 on our outdoor specialties for the resurfacing on our pickleball court and Wells basketball for $31,350. And I contacted City Hall and Public Works directors, but the pickleball courts are done, but the basketball court is still not done. That's still cracked, and I had suggested we withhold total payment on that until they get it done. The agreement was they were gonna have it done by Memorial Day, and now we've been hounding them all summer. And then they promised it would be done by Labor Day, and Russ really had to bark and keep after them to get it done, to get the pickleball courts done. They said we'd do that, but they haven't done the rest of it, so we got a little bit of leverage on them. Did we ever find out, is this the total bill for everything, or is this just for the work that they've done so far, Whitney?
Yeah, there was a mistake. It's the pickleball court and the Green River basketball court within that new fencing. Because there's three pickleball courts and the basketball court. So they're not invoicing for anything at Wells Park yet.
Okay, well, we got a little bit of leverage to get them to get that basketball court done, so I would move that we pull this payment and hold it until they get that done, to hopefully get it done this fall yet. Would be my recommendation. I mean, if we have some leverage on something that was promised that would be done by Memorial Day, and we're past Labor Day and we still haven't done it, and just work and see with Becca or Russ and to see where we're at with it, but we finally have some leverage on it now, so I think we should use it.
Yeah, that was part of the deal, is that they were gonna do that court, and then they said they would do the basketball court at the same time.
As long as they were here, it was
Right.
gonna work in perfect. They could go and resurface and redo stuff while stuff
Yeah.
dried, and while they did stuff, well, it was raining somewhere where they were working, and Russ said it wasn't raining here, but it never got done, and, you know, it's drug out, and we got some leverage, let's use it.
I think, I agree with you to a point, Jeff. They have performed most of their job. Maybe we withhold a portion of it. I don't know what you think about that, Becca, but it seems reasonable that we pay them for the job that they actually completed, and maybe back out the portion that we think.
Well, I agree with Councilmember Miller, is that they said they were gonna do something and they haven't done it.
Okay.
So, they were going to do the basketball court at the same time they were going to do that. And we've been pushing them all year to get this done, and it shouldn't have been that way. So, they had the upper hand on us because we're waiting on them. Now it's time to turn it around and put it on them to get their job done, to get paid.
And we'll gladly pay them.
I don't have a problem with it either.
Just get the work done, is my outlook on it.
And maybe, of course, along the way there, they'll learn something that they should probably do it when they're supposed to do it.
Well, and to your point, Jeff, the days are numbered, really. We're middle September almost. Our nice days to get it done are getting numbered, so.
Well, and that's where I say, with Russ and with Becca and with them, negotiate and figure out something, and if weather-wise, we can't get it done, but then going forward, are we gonna wait another 6 months, come next spring again? It's something that we budgeted to spend the money to try to do the improvements, and if we don't get it done, it gets put back for another year, and
Do you want to put that in the form of a motion?
I would make an emotion that we withhold payment for line item 70 for outdoor specialties for the full amount of $31,350, and let City Manager Becca and Russ, our Public Works Director, negotiate and figure out for a completion date on the basketball court before they receive any payment.
I would second that motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to withhold payment until completion of the basketball court. I think we'll have roll call vote on that. Stacy?
Councilmember Saldi,
Yes.
Rolls,
Yes.
Gullickson, Miller,
Yes.
Mayor Waller.
Yes. Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you.
Okay, we will move on. We have no petitions, requests, and
We still have
communication.
to vote, I think.
I think we still
on
have to.
Yeah.
paying
Oh, I'm sorry.
everything.
I'm sorry, we had a motion and a second to approve. We had discussion. Is there any further discussion on that before we move on?
Line 44, we have, was it like runway lighting or
Yep.
overhead?
runway lighting,
Okay.
and it'll be covered by insurance claim.
Perfect. Is it still safe to use as they're doing
Yeah,
it?
it's all-
Okay.
Okay, any other discussion on the items on the consent agenda? Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Now we can move on. We have no petitions, requests, or communications. We'll move on to ordinances and resolutions, and the first resolution before us is resolution authorizing fund transfer. Should be listed there before you. Want to discuss anything on that, Becca, or is that pretty straightforward, or?
I think it's pretty straightforward unless you guys have any questions.
And that's just using the American Rescue Fund monies and, okay,
Some capital.
capital outlay, all right, moving it into the airport tax then, okay.
I will
Any
move
discussion?
approval of the resolution authorizing the fund transfer for the airport taxi line reconstruction and crack seal project with funding of the, what is it, city share of 22% and the American Rescue Program of the, I'm sorry, no, that's part of the, using the American Rescue Funds as our part of it, correct? So the balance would be the 78% would be federal money?
No, it would be coming from two funds to cover our local share.
But the balance, the other 78% is coming from, is federal and state? Okay. Yeah, okay, thank you. Clear as mud on that? Our share is 22.1% coming from American Rescue Funds and our capital outlay fund of the total of $108,541.65.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve that resolution authorizing fund transfer. We'll have roll call vote on that resolution, please, Stacy?
Councilmember Miller,
Yes.
Dillon, Crowell,
Yes.
Salvi,
Yes.
Mayor Walsh.
Yes. Okay, now we have a resolution, or ordinance, let's see, resolution setting a second reading date for ordinance number 119, an ordinance regulating the use of cannabis and cannabis-derived products in public space and places. Any discussion on that?
So we'll need a public hearing, set for October 10th for that.
Okay. So you just need a motion on that, right?
Yeah. I'll make a motion, setting a public hearing for October 10th for the second reading of ordinance number 119.
I will second.
Do we need
Okay.
a time with that also or not? If we just have the date, we're fine?
Yeah, let's see.
It would be 5:15 when the meeting starts.
Okay, normally we have a time, I thought, so.
Motion to include time at 5:15.
Okay. All right, we have a motion and a second to approve the second reading for October 10th at 5:15. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion carried. All right, we shall move on to the city manager's newsletter.
Yeah, so, we already talked about the public hearing. So we'll go on to the budget, scheduled a work session for September 21st, at 5 o'clock. We do have a council member that won't be here, so just wondering if we want to change it to the 25th or if we want to keep it at the 21st. The 25th will be the Monday right before the council meeting.
Sorry, I got some medical appointments that I can't change. I've been waiting for a couple months to get into. If you guys wanna go ahead and do it.
No, I think we
Without
should
me, but I'd
switch.
Just as soon be here if I can, but, you know, I told Becca I could stop and discuss with her too, either before or after, or if we can move it to that Monday, the 25th, before our next meeting.
it's okay with me.
Monday the 25th works for me too.
Fine on my end. I think it's good. I think it's good to have
Everybody.
Yeah.
everyone
I
here.
think so.
Yeah.
I agree with that.
You know, as long as it works for Kim, if not,
Yeah.
then we'll have to switch it
Go
up.
from
but-
there again, but let's shoot for that,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah, I'm okay with that too.
So we'll just make that change.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And then, talked to department heads at our meeting today. It sounded like they are here for questions, or they were here last year for questions. So I just, on my newsletter, just kinda asked what the process was last year, and what your thoughts for this conversation, besides kinda going over what, we are presenting for the budget and the levy. If that's what you're expecting, or.
I'll defer to the veterans.
Well, last year was the first time that we've had them back for a number of years, and I think it got to be more of it got drug out or carried on, and I guess I think it's your job to work and get the budget figured out with our different department heads, and I think if you bring the information and the facts for us, and if we sit down with you, I think it's easier for us to communicate back and forth with the city manager on that,
Okay.
instead of having however many more. It just, to me, got a lot of different extra commotion that, and if we have questions from you on that for us to question and
Back.
get the answers back, but I just think it's a good chance for us to sit down with you on a one-on-one instead of having all that extra, is my personal feeling on it. Any
You know, I
other
think it
input?
works. Is that what you're kind of more
That-
comfortable with?
That'll work, yeah.
Okay.
I was just kind of questioning how their role in the work session was, so.
So we'll see the preliminary budget or plus things that they want versus maybe what you're thinking about giving them, or we'll have a full list of what their wants are, but what you would probably recommend only giving them.
Is that what you're wanting?
I think generally that's what Blaine had done in the past. He kind of put together a wish list of each, by department, what they were looking for, and then we had a discussion, and then
But that was presented to us at a much later.
much
What
later.
what we'd asked for in our work sessions, our
Yep.
earlier was to have something before it's pretty much cut and dried, to having the requests, your recommendation for us, and then if we have questions back and forth, why not or why at that time, I think is what the council has stated in some of our previous get-togethers, was what we were looking to try to do.
More or less, each department head's gonna give you a list of things that they'd like to have. And then
Or need.
wish list, and then you're gonna decide what you kind of think we
Where the
need to do to
money's
put in the
coming
budget, and that's kind of the part where we would like to just come in and just say, and hear your thoughts about why you're thinking to go this way, and what they have, and then maybe we could have some input, or maybe we see it a different way, or if it's just perfectly fine. It just was a way to get us a little more involved in the budget process. It seemed to be before we got to the point, it was already, the budget was already done, and I really don't even know why we were talking about it, because nothing really changed, so.
Right, well,
Not that we're gonna change it, but it's just a discussion whether or not we
Right.
would do
And-
something.
right, and it kind of goes that way just because you have to approve the budget.
Yeah.
I can definitely bring a list of what they're thinking and kind
Sure.
of their not even a 5-year plan, but a plan, but, yeah, and kind of where we see money falling and where we can pull from. Okay, so we'll switch it to the 25th at 5 o'clock.
Yeah, it's kind of important to separate the wants and the needs. And
Well, yeah, you got so much money to go around, it's sort of like the Christmas catalog, looking through.
Yep.
That, God, I'd like this and this and this, and what can we live within our means,
Mm-hmm.
what we need.
Okay.
Yeah, and then we'll go on to the city charter. So, there was a discussion, before about getting someone from the league out here at the meeting or the work session in January. So Mayor Wallers and I talked to Tori from the league, and, she mentioned that we we don't have right now an active charter commission, so we need to get, people appointed to that. So I did reach out and talk to the interim city attorney to discuss with the charter how that all works. So she had some questions about what is the intention of the review? What do we see changing? She wanted to see how she's looking into how we appoint members to the charter, since it does talk about the district judge, chief district judge appoints. So she's gonna look into how that all works. She's hoping to have it by the next meeting, some of these questions into that, but she's been busy with court, so it might not be until the meeting in October. So.
Yeah, could I just interject a little bit on that, Becca? What we learned, what I learned, and I think Becca the same, we're obligated by state statute to have a charter commission. Not only us, but all charter cities. There's 854 registered cities. 107 of those have a city charter, like us, a home rule charter. And Tori did get back to me today. I don't know if you were on that message or not. I asked her where the oversight is in something like this, because we obviously haven't had a charter commission in all the years I've been here. So somewhere along the line we had one when we developed our charter, but somewhere along the line it disappeared. And I asked her where that oversight actually occurs, and she got back to me today and informed me that there really isn't anybody that oversees or that whole, that monitors that whole program and ensures that the charter cities have their commissions and that they're functioning. That is actually policed by this group right here, city council and the city manager and administrator. So somewhere along the line, our charter commission was dissolved. And we're not the only ones that are, I guess, in non-compliance, but she did strongly recommend that she recommended that we try to get this put together before our January 30th meeting, so then whoever we decide to pick, those individuals can be present for that meeting as well. So that's kind of what she had suggested. It's up to us how we want to go about doing this. Again, her service to come out here is free, that presentation, and she will explain a lot of different things about the relationship between the charter and ordinances and benefits of home rule charter, all that kind of good stuff. So I think it's going to be a really educational night for us. I think we'll learn a lot. So it's kind of up to the council how you want to proceed with establishing this charter commission. Seven to 15 individuals is the number of people.
So our charter says 7.
Yeah, charter says 7. So we'll just kind of hang close to that number. And I was kind of surprised to learn that we were supposed to have one, because you had indicated at Canby you didn't have one either. But if state statute says you're supposed to have one, again, I guess we're supposed to have one.
And these coming from the community, some of our elected officials,
So
or?
that's what the city attorney is doing. She's looking up
Okay,
who it can be.
okay,
When her and I talked, is there a conflict of interest if, are members of the council, if they can have overlap of council members with this charter commission, or if it's completely separate. So I'm sure once she looks into it a little
Okay.
more, she'll give us more information.
I think it's worth looking into and doing some research. I mean, we've been talking about it for 9 months, or 10 months, and I think to look into it and go forward and see if we can learn and, go forward and make some improvements or tweaks to our system. So, yeah, I'm all for looking in and trying to learn and to move forward with it.
I really you know, for me personally, I'm not recommending any radical changes to our form of government. I like the home rule charter, but I think to really get the full benefit out of the home rule charter, you know, we can pull in some people from the public and let them, and they're obligated to meet at a minimum once a year, and the commission can set up how often they wanna meet, but I think it's beneficial to have some input from the community, cause it's not her charter, it's not mine, it's not yours, it's the people's charter, so I think it's important that they have a voice.
And duties and responsibilities of the different individuals
Exactly right.
that in our elected system or our appointed system to where we're at with it and where we should be at with it.
Yep. All right, so we'll just wait then to hear from the city attorney and
Yeah.
see what their recommendation is, okay? Good deal.
The next work session, is slated for the October 31st. So I know that's Halloween, so just making sure we still wanna meet that day for a work
Monday the
session.
30th instead of on Halloween? Or move it more than that?
I mean, that works if we want to move it. I don't do anything on
Because you got
Halloween
kids on
anyway.
Halloween.
I'm the one with, that would have the, yeah.
Probably
And I hate
impact
to
you
get
more.
the house egged and
You
get
would-
trees toilet papered because
I
I'm
don't
not
have any
handing out
trick-or-treaters,
trees.
so-
That would be appreciated if
I
we-
would think on Monday the
Yeah.
30th would make sense for us to just move it that one day.
I don't think so.
Not worth
You know, and I was just thinking on a
Kids aren't
potential
coming to your house
topics
this
for
year.
that, it's something that I think is important for us to consider. As you all know, we do have a city manager evaluation process that we started just prior to Blaine leaving, and I think during that meeting, it would be beneficial for us to kind of go through that a little bit with Becca and just explain to her, you know, what the process is. Cause, you know, we just don't want to hit her with a, you know, annual evaluation without knowing kind of what we're looking at.
You're
you
not
know?
ready to throw the big surprise on her?
That's right.
No.
I mean, that's
that would
one
be-
topic we could
yeah,
talk about.
Just what we've
Mhm.
discussed or where we're at with it. I think that would be good.
Sounds good. And the last thing I have, is the information from our work session on 7th Street. So, I spoke to Ellers on a utility rate study. Cost is, $10,600 for the water and sewer. If we did storm, I'm sure that would be more. Russ talked to Rural Water Association, and, since we are a member, they provide one at no cost, so we're looking to meet with them on doing that, probably middle of October is when they have availability for us. Attached you have the survey, so if there's any, thoughts on, changes, different things, I had our, utility staff look at this and, kind of tweak some of my wordings for some of that, so.
I guess I would just, on line 7, just the estimated cost to 20 to 40 to the property owners and a monthly fee, just that is and make sure we have a highlighted estimate, because that is a moving big target that could be more or less than that, not that, well, you said it was gonna be this.
Yes.
So if this is our guesstimate or
Yeah.
estimate, how we have that
Well-
to our best projections.
Bolded, underlined, italicized.
Well, yeah, I mean,
24-point font.
And I think we should change it from 20 to 40 to like 40 to 100, so that if we come in lower,
they'd be happy.
we're gonna be
It's-
happy.
I think it's good to find out from the people where they're at, or the ones that are willing. We're gonna send this out to approximately 112 that we talked about.
I think in all of those project areas, I think we
Yeah,
should
to
send
find
them
out
to
where
all
they're
of
at.
those.
And when we originally annexed, or before, it was right before I got voted on, but at that time you needed to have, I think, 75% of the group that was requesting to get the water and sewer done. So that's why we haven't done it, because I don't think we've had or met that number anywhere close. But yeah, see where we're at with it, with their well system, their sewer system. Do
I
we
like
have
it.
anything, have you been tested? I read it through it, but as far as, have you had any testing done as far as any arsenic levels in your water? I mean, the one gentleman that was here said that that was an issue on their house, that
James.
if you, have you done any testing? Are you satisfied with your current drinking water?
Yeah, and I think at the end of the
Opposed?
day, we determined that, you know, we had that arsenic brochure, and even even though his numbers he thought were, you know, elevated, they were well within the accepted levels.
Within the range, and then
Yeah.
talking with some of the water softener
But it is a good question to ask, I
providers
agree.
that were
'cause-
able to take care of that
Yep.
if for a better system or a higher, but just, yeah, are you currently satisfied or happy with your system, or are you? Super, yeah, I think the more information we can get for us to make an educated decision.
Just a typo on 7 there, on where you go, if the project were to move forward, there were a public hearing, you could just say there would be a public hearing. You got "were" in there, just a little typo. But that's, just change that, and I think we're fine. I like it, I think it's very
Yeah.
good. It'll be good information to have. Anything else, Becca, in your report you'd like to highlight?
No, I guess I'd just like to bring up maybe something that goes with this 7th Street is there anything do we have any ordinances that maybe we should look up that says within, that building projects that are not within, that are on the outside of city limits? What is our reach on the outside of our city limits that we can control, whether or not we bring them city water and sewer? So I mean that we start to prevent this from happening again. So if somebody comes in and wants to do a building project somewhere,
That's what this last sentence is here. Attorney will be looking in the city code to see if we put in services, if it is requested to be hooked up. Something about annexation was in there.
But I think within a half a mile.
Well, I mean,
if
I think-
remember right, when
I think
was on the planning
it
commission.
is a half a mile.
I think, but
if there are-
outside of that, we still have jurisdiction on any development that we can, deny it. But yeah, to get that information for everyone to know.
And make sure we're on the same page, of course, with the planning commission, because it goes through them first before it usually gets to us. That's kind of important.
Would it go through the planning commission if it was outside city limits?
Probably not.
If it's outside, probably not.
Okay, that was my point, was so
Okay.
far, anything outside of our city limits, that, what is our reach? We have a little, I think,
Half a mile, I believe.
half a mile.
I get
that
your
we have
point, so we
reached.
can eliminate repeat the same mistake that was made 30 years ago.
Right, I mean, I think that's, all of a sudden, we're trying to get to the problem, but let's create the solution to
Yep.
the problem, and so that if that is the case, we're getting that done.
And that might be something we'd have to maybe change by ordinance then, Becky, you think?
If, yeah,
just set a
we'd have
standard.
to talk to the
See how that's gonna be
city
done?
attorney.
Okay. Makes sense,
Not
O'Brien,
gonna
I'm
get
glad you brought that
advice.
up. Anything else on your end?
Not on my end,
Or
no.
on your ends? Okay, we can move on, I guess, have board updates, if anybody has anything they'd like to bring before the council on any of the boards they're on. Of course, we got Septemberfest coming up, that's another, less than 2 weeks away, and, anything else?
I had just sent a copy of an item to Becca this morning also. And just, Kevin, you had mentioned a while back about doing a cleanup like
Yeah.
we used to do. But I got an email from a club I belong to over in Starbuck, just on a community cleanup project that they just did this past weekend at City Hall. They charged a fee and people could bring in things they wanted to get rid of, and there's a cost structure for the TV, monitors, sets, furniture, and you bring it in and get rid of it. And they had some volunteers come in and help to do it, but instead of us having the people set their stuff out on the curb and our poor city crew going out and cleaning up all this stuff, I don't think we should expect them to do that, but I think this sounds like a good idea if we can find a spot to do it. I talked to Russ this morning and said, what do you think about city shopping? He said, no. He said, because then every time somebody has something they want to get rid of, they're gonna just bring it out there and
Yeah.
dump it. But if we could work with the landfill, but I read into there where they got a grant of some type from the local refuse company to help getting rid of it, but if you invite in the company that recycles the monitors and the TVs, and there's always some of the scrap and metal guys that are looking to get all that for no charge. But if we can set up some spot in the spring before school gets out, it seems like once school gets out is when the boulevards get bombarded with all the stuff that the college kids are getting rid of. But just something, we don't have to move on it, but just on our thoughts, I think to me, it sounded like a good remedy, and I'll check back over and see how it went with them and just follow up with everybody to see how it worked for them. But I like the looks of that. It's a fee. Bring your stuff. We'll help you clean it up, get rid of it, give you a leg up or halfway to cleaning up and getting rid of your stuff instead of sitting in your yard.
Yeah, it helps us recover some of the cost, obviously, instead of the city footing the whole bill. So I like this. Thanks for your legwork on this. When I visited with Troy, when Becca and I were out there visiting with Troy, he suggested when and if we do this, just separate it by east and west side. Do the west side 1 week, or east side another week.
Or a parking lot out the university if we have
Something
a lot.
like
I mean,
that.
if we're working with the university or
Yep.
the school or just some locations, but different things for us to look at or talk to different groups to
Yep.
help us with it. Clean up our community and keep it looking decent.
Good idea. Thank you for doing that. Anything else anybody would like to present, Zach?
The first pass of the application for, was it federal first, or was it state was first? Yeah, for the tree board. I saw a first pass at that. It looked really good.
Oh,
It looked very good.
it's good to hear. Good news. Any other business from any of the boards? What anybody would like to bring up? If not, I have an informational item. I spoke with Becca briefly about this today. Flags at half-staff on city buildings. As we all know, that Governor Walz had an order that all flags were to be flown yesterday, 9/11, at half-mast. I come to find out that our city buildings, however, did not lower their flags, so Becca and I talked about that, and I think going forward, that's something that I think we have to do a better job of trying to keep a handle on that. And I think in the past, when I brought it up to Blaine, he said that city buildings are city buildings, and we're really not obligated to adhere to the state thing. But the way I see that, whether it's a city building or a state building, and especially something like this, I mean, I think we need to be all in on that, support that. So I don't think we can get hung up on the details, but I don't know what the council thinks on that, but it's just to be, so we're unified, library over there and then right across the street, they were lowered and, we're not, so just kind of pull it in a little bit so we're kind of on a unified front.
We have to have somebody then that would be in charge to do that for however many flags or wherever we have
Yep.
flags that would need to.
I know I'm
have
asking,
that. And if
for
it's-
somebody to go out and do it, it's just another thing they have to do, but, I think it's important. I don't know what the rest of you think, but.
Yeah, I would like to see it.
I would too.
We'll make it happen.
Are our flags here flown all the time, or are they taken down all the time?
I think they're up because they're lighted.
Because they're light, okay.
And that's where we've tried to make sure that there's lights on the different ones that are in different areas for the David Day. I think there's a little deal over here in the park for that, but we got lights on that. There's a light on out to the Eagles ballpark on that. I mean, that's taken down once the ball season is done out there, but pretty much from May to the early September that flies. But I believe it's lighted so it can stay up, so.
Yeah, and I did receive a call. Why aren't the city flags? Why isn't the flag over at the park lowered? So now we have an answer. But we'll just do better. Do better at that. Thank you. Anything else that we have to come before the council? Hearing none, meeting adjourned.